We're live before I go into another episode today. So, future humans, next generation of leaders, self-led people. We are talking about somatic mindset micro habits. And I thought of doing a live to spell out why they work and who they work for. So when you are pursuing personal growth, spiritual growth, and you're therefore consistently ascending, it's actively thanks to this thing called nervous system. And so somatic mindset micro habits, whether it's with a high capacity or low capacity, they work if you want to grow your autonomous self-regulation skills. Now, how do we know if we can autonomously self-regulate? Well, a lot of my attachment trauma educational courses spelled it out. Pretty straightforward. You either learned as a kid, or you'll learn if you go and get yourself to mindful therapists so that you can become securely attached. So I'll try to do my best to spell it out like I'm a 5-year-old, which is my favorite thing to do. Okay, number one, the somatic resource, this lovely body of ours. Okay, you want to have a relationship with the sensations, the images, the behaviors, the affects, and the meanings. See them. That's Peter Levine. In fact, he talks about fear today in a short, and he spells out how fear is located in 3 ways in our body. And we'll use fear because all of humans have it. And so once you develop a good relationship with fear in your body, the somatic resource, then you're going to be really happy with doing the somatic mindset practices, which, by the way, on PayHip we have a free PDF for you that integrates the SMART, Be Yourself the Smart Way, so your ventral pivot, your baseline to get all calm and cool. I'm going to give you an example from the earthquake stuff that I got to go through, because even if you're at a low capacity, so it's like a 5-second thing that you can do with the practice of your autonomous self-regulation skills, you know how I did what I did. And so again, let me pause myself before I get lost and continue blabbing. I love to blab. So fear is contained first within the body sensations, Peter Levine is explaining. Then it's associated to particular thought, and it is then reinforced with images that come up. And so this is the part of where, when you, on the other hand, can uncouple sensations, so what fear feels like in the body, and then you say, oh, those are those thoughts, and oh, those are those images. That's why if you contain sensations, images, behaviors, affects, meanings, then you're on a good roll with being able to autonomously self-regulate. You'll also know, because if you're building good resilience, you get more curious as you grow up. I'm 46, I don't know about you. Okay, so again, somatic mindset micro habits, they work for those who are looking to grow autonomous regulation skills, which all real leaders will want, because that's where the real strength is, in the ventral vagal state. It's also called firm kindness by Terrell, or it's called that ease, and that's where Deb Dana comes in. So number one, let's go back and let me reiterate. So when you are using your somatic resource, your body, which means that you have a secure attachment, so you have I see myself, I soothe myself, I'm safe to be myself, I'm secure even in the absence of my primary caregiver, so my 0-1-year-old Maria with that earthquake. Yes, I would have loved to have someone to pat me on the back. No. We talked about how the difference between true leadership, they empower you and validate the emotional sphere. So I'll reassure you because I want to be reassured as well. Then I'll be logical enough to know with my mind that I don't have 100% certainty. So like with the earthquake, I have to go about it baby steps. The first, that level 2 capacity, which is a low capacity, I'm in the midst of shaky and my body is doing the thing that any body's going to do. It's going to defend itself. So I know immediately I'll just pause, breathe, then allow myself to continue with my 5 senses to look at the surrounding area. Okay, so here is a very practical example of that, which is a micro habit, but it is one that you consistently do when you're comfortable in your own skin and your own bones. And so the somatic resource and your nervous system. Okay, so number one, you'll find if you can do this autonomous self-regulation, it's easy for you to notice activation, so like with panic attacks or with an earthquake, and you notice that it's your nervous system that is feeling activated. It's a very specific feeling, and the capacity to discern the different emotions, so fear is very different than anger, right? Anger, ugh. Sadness, you just start crying, and we're all motivated by the same three subcortical main areas, and we all really do want to hug when we're afraid, because we're all 0-1-year-olds at the end of it. Even the people who are spiritual bypassers and think that there's some way that, I'm going to leave that one for another episode. I saw something yesterday which I was like, really? Wow. Like, shame. So what you find out from smart researchers, mindful therapists, the ones who care to help us access our higher potential, which I'm supporting the future leaders to do as well. And that's why spirituality and science, they come together. They're not at odds, but the ones who continue to put them at odds, they're for the ones who don't like people like myself, which is, let me break it down to you. Science explains our embodied brain. The restorative, embodied, self-aware, accountable, regulating person is growing good resilience. They're the ones who are going to be using the somatic mindset micro-habit practices that I share, that I sell and that I provide and equip you with to navigate your own personal and spiritual growth. They're on PayHip. And then for one-to-one mentorship for people who are actually not looking to validate themselves, but they have objectives. Because a real leader wants to build a sustainable business, wants to build a sustainable life, wants to build a lot of things, but above all, they understand the true strength that comes from our ventral vagal state. Because we're all attachment trauma educated at the very bare minimum with the gist of it, and the left likes the truth, and so does the right. When you are autonomously a self-sovereign person who is a human, whether spiritual or not, and says, I know that's the truth because I embody humanity. Okay, so you embody the child parts, embody the nervous system. When someone's spelling out something that is like 1, 2, 3, the only ones who will react to an explanation of how you can work with your emotional plane are the same ones who don't want to take a good look at the fact that emotional reactivity demonstrates there's a lack of capacity to self-regulate autonomously, and there's also potentially a lack of desire to do so, and that rage that can come up is the unhealthy self-righteousness that all the good therapists talk about, which is fair and square for people who did not get a sense of safety in enough of a way to say, I can do it even on my own. Okay, so true strength of any one of us is where we can reassure our 0-1-year-old, even when we're all alone. It doesn't mean you like to be all by yourself reassuring that nervous system, but you know you can, and that's from a prefrontal, without using stories to create monsters or some kind of again, the spiritual bypasser person I saw yesterday, the way that they went about this entire conspiracy and a lot more with entities that are living out in the sky, and as they're saying, I am embodying neutrality, I'm like, wow, I mean, you might embody neutrality, but you have a bunch of spiritual bypassing stories for me to make fun of less later. Anyways, okay, so let me reiterate. Let's talk about somatic mindset micro-habit practices. Yes, they work. Who do they work for? They work for the ones of you who are self-led. You are now leaders, future leaders, and you understand why spirituality and personal growth people come together, and no, guru is not a trap, enlightenment is not a trap. There's really no trap except for one, which is we all want to be reassured that everything will be okay, and that's the one thing that no human being out there can do for us. But if we're smart enough, stable, mature, adaptive, rational, teachable, we'll know the timbre of truth, because they will always want to empower us with the knowledge that they share versus try to make us buy into their method or into their story. But the people who are happy together, like Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, have fun. Okay, so they don't want autonomous self-regulation. They might be like, you know what, Maria, you're fake. I don't believe you can do any of this stuff. Now, like, I can't prove it. I just can explain it. Okay, so somatic resource, your body. Let's find out if you can track your nervous system with a couple of things. So, like the earthquake, I knew immediately I was activated, because that's pretty simple. I got scared. The floor shook and everything shook, and I didn't run. I just went to the safe spot in the house that I know I'm supposed to. And then I breathe. Okay, that's good. That's a 5-second. There's your low capacity level 2 sub-somatic mindset micro-habit in the moment. And let's put it into the example of a human being. A friend of mine and I were having a conversation. That way you can hear about it with a personal life experience. And we're having fun, and they make an invite, and I say something that is a typical sentence, and all of a sudden, from where we were having a nice chit-chat, they're like yelling at me in my face, and I had a bunch of emotions, a bunch of sadness, a bunch of stuff come up, plus images scroll behind my mind because the words that came out of their mouth triggered a past memory event. And so here's our explicit memory. Okay, so as the no words, images, the feeling of wanting to cry, and just and none of that happened. What happened was breathe, self-regulate. We had a misunderstanding, and then they continued to be angry at me, and then I was able to fix this entire relationship, meaning I'm sorry that we had a misalignment. Please, can we talk about it? And instead they actually apologized eventually with a song, which was great, but it would have been nice to have a conversation. That's how those who autonomously self-regulate do it. The people who don't autonomously self-regulate don't necessarily want to have that kind of interaction, which is why we have two groups of people. We have the fake leaders. They're fear-based. They all hang out together. They only like their stories, and in fact, they don't understand how we embody love when we embody healthy fear, because they don't know that they're not self-regulating in the ventral vagal state yet. So when we get angry, it's because we want injustices to get fixed, which is fair and square. But how do we do it? So some people have the smoke and mirror illusion that the fight response is why we get things done. I have seen our species through our history books. We've gotten things done thanks to the collective, not because of the pain, not because of the anger, not because of any of that which is an external motivating factor. It's because we wake up in the morning and we get to be participating. So there's a lot of different reasons people get motivated. This is why fear-based leadership, I don't believe they will be done. I would want them. They're not an enemy per se, but I actually really would like them to become others. So I'm going to put that to the side and continue with our lives so that I can then go on and record our other episode. Okay, so the somatic resource. Can you track the cues of your nervous system? Can you work with implicit or explicit memory? I gave you a couple of work examples. So for work, I have so many different examples. In Zoom meetings sometimes I've had, because I was suffering of IBS a long time ago. Well, now it feels like a long time ago, but it was probably a couple years at this point. How long has it been since I've been on my diet? The regulars know this. Since the Mystic Nutritionist Diet playlist has been online. So anyways, my point was, in meetings where you're really needing to go somewhere, being able to breathe and just say it's okay, and if something happens, thankfully we're on screen, no one can tell, so there's one micro habit practice with your thoughts and your body. And then, let's see, the other part, for mystics who think that we are contagious, or the somatic countertransference, yes, we all autonomously regulate and then we co-regulate, which is why learning how to differentiate and link is really good practice. And did you know that your insula can grow? I didn't until Dr. Dennis informed me. And that's because, alert, you bring your prefrontal cortex down. Okay, so when you do autonomous self-regulation skills, you enjoy it, your emotional intelligence grows. In fact, there are those who do already know that higher beings are here. We're not higher, we're just in our higher human conscious potential because our somatic resource. So I track my nervous system cues. I know how breath supports me. I'm able to contain my implicit, explicit memory and not project it. So an earthquake, a personal interaction where we're fighting with each other, basically, quote unquote, and then in a work situation where I'm under stress because I want to be a high performer, but I'm having some bodily sensations and I'm having some anxiety. And those who think that the body has nothing to do with it, I've seen them make comments on Peter Levine's content, and I'm like, okay. But that's what shame does. It refuses, and it's not logical. It's actively a lack of desire because there's fear to meet themselves, which is why it's just sad. So fear-based leaders give Peter Pan and Lost Boys and Wendy a home. They have charged narratives of good and bad. They continue to think that fighting, and so that sympathetic is the best way to be strong, versus understanding that that's the worst way to be strong because there's a better way, which is in your ventral vagal state, firm kindness, being in your prefrontal, actually understanding that fear is a part of being human, so is sadness, so is anger, and that you have the capacity to wield your metastability, the flexibility of your your brain. Neuroscientists talk all about it. So the flow state is awesome. And true empowered leadership is that. And then anybody who's faking it doesn't know how to bring in the energy of the ventral vagal state because they have yet to go through light body, light body, light body, light body, rainbow body. And then after the rainbow body, here's a mystic spiritual experience. Restored embodied people. Wow. Like there is no comparison to the embodied, regulated self, in the ventral, I have no way to, let me see, how can I describe it? It is the embodiment of the word empowered. It is the embodiment of the word strength, because when you blend the ventral energy with the capacity for a person to wield all of those emotions that come up for all of us, and for them to be in their prefrontal cortex, and therefore with the somatic mindset micro habit of I care, because we're all relational beings. So you're not playing petty. You're not looking at the ones who backstab, who do all of the let me, cast some stones, and they're all enraged in ways that are understandable, but in ways that play small. So again, Peter Pan and the Lost Boys are fighting Hook. To use an example, so fantasy stage people will look like they're doing amazing, and what people will relate to is the fight response, which is actually a very, I'm going to leave it alone, but there's a way someone described it to me, and I understood as they were describing how appealing the feeling of this visceral stuff was. But as they're describing it, the person is healing and actually on a good path for themselves. They know that they're not their monster. Their monster came about for a lot of reasons, which aren't about a monster in the sky. It's for their physical life. And they still get treated in ways by their entire community that is judgmental. And in the meantime, though, they're handling that monster really great and well, and they're doing what they can to be a healthy person for their family, for their community, and continue to grow as a good entrepreneur. So people who understand how leadership works, they move into health, not the other way around. And when they have this visceral stuff, they don't want to continue perpetuating a negative survival defensive loop. Again, there's also the awareness. Your embodiment knows the beautiful, full, blissful, and more strength that comes from being in a ventral vagal state. The habit is for you to say yes to, which is why it's only if you want to grow autonomous regulation skills. Some people don't want to. They want injustices fixed. They want betrayal to be punished. They want abandonment to be admitted. They want those 5 core wounds, humiliation and rejection, to be vindicated. And so this is where resentment, vindication, those frequencies, and that low mindset, because it's a low mindset, meaning that it doesn't move into recognizing we're all human, we all can make mistakes, which is why that low mindset doesn't bring emotionally intelligent people. But there will be a bunch of people who continue down that path if they choose to disregard the signs, because they enjoy hanging out with those who bring to them charged narratives, good and bad groups. And so here's where ignorance is part of what our species continues to have. Then we have the part that people might not have a sense of safety to be themselves. And so it's a journey for our lovely human species. In the meantime, growing autonomous regulation skills is what you will want when you watch this. So let me continue. So once you can track your nervous system, and you know this, you know your implicit and explicit memory, you are also going to be able to balance yourself as you walk through the thoughts and the sensations and the emotions and what's going on. You integrate the somatic resource work with the mindset, where you feel seen, soothed, safe to be yourself, and you understand that, humanly speaking, that we will sometimes be alone dealing with an emotional challenge, but that if we've built a good support system, that we will have a support system of self-led people who will also be there. And that sometimes things happen, but that doesn't mean that we are indifferent. Having the capacity to be equanimous and discerning makes leaders understand how to get up every morning and continue doing what they do best. Spiritual bypassers have a story for you, and so do the somatic bypassers. And in their charged state, of course, they raise very important issues, as we all do. At the end of the day, though, the collective gets it done together, and there isn't a need for a big push or a small push. This is the part of why it's a conscious world, and consciously speaking, the ones who need for things to get bad before getting motivated. Have you seen, there's a bunch of commercials, the ones who procrastinate until the deadline is up? So survival defensive mode, the people who are faking it, they don't want to grow autonomous self-regulation skills. They like to be validated with each other's charges, and then they like to come together with their list and say that their demands are more important than the other people's demands. And here we have adaptive child part people who basically only know of right or wrong. And so here's our limited mindset people, because they don't know how to use 2 sides of the brain and then breathe and then notice we all have effective realism distortions. we all can have inference of that which is something. Inference, how do you explain that one? We all can assume things. Okay, so we don't want to assume based on stereotypes, generalizations, and ignorance. So the people who are going to be using the somatic mindset microhabit practices and who already are doing it are the same ones who understand what leadership is made of. And then when we look at our fear-based leaders, we know who they are too. We're going to continue that conversation in our lovely other episode, because what I have found is that within the sphere, the entire ecosystem of personal growth and spiritual growth, we have a number of those who are in leadership positions, but they're more like a Peter Pan. So top down, it's not really about higher or lower in a good or bad way. It's made for the people by the people, and the world is full of people. So as long as we have those who are in their survival defense mode, they're dysregulated, they choose not to notice that they need to go and get themselves to get therapists, become securely attached, become an integrated brain. Once they're integrated at that point, then it is, do you want to do personal growth or spiritual growth? So the responsibility of your autonomous regulation begins with, some people will have had it and they will have kept it. I kept my own sense of self. I see, soothe, safe. Maria's already good. If she's by herself, she knows how to handle the mental and emotional stuff. No, it's not fun to be in the middle of an earthquake. No, it's not fun for somebody to be yelling at you. No, it's not fun to basically be in work environments where sometimes things happen where it puts you under stress, but it happens. And to need to make it sound like what we're doing, the somatic mindset micro habits, the daily inner growth, is some medal of honor. It's our higher human consciousness potential. So when the mystic and spiritual wise ones say higher beings are already here, and others will talk about how our species is not ready to see blue people or yellow people, basically aliens from out there, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day in the neighborhood, won't you be mine? I have the best job in the entire world. I get to be a 5D mystic, and we're moving into the 7th dimension, and I get to be a spiritual, enlightened one who tells you enlightenment is not a trap, because it's AKA a person who can see, soothe, safe, secure themselves. It's a conscious leader in front of you. It just means you know how to lead you and be sovereign and lead someone else. And when you spot the fear-based leaders, you're like, okay, they're all there for the ones who are playing small. But we shouldn't say that, because their window of tolerance might be one that we don't know. No, they're ignoring their window of tolerance. You see what I'm saying? So they're validating each other, and when they do that, it's like feeding each other fish instead of teaching each other how to fish. But they don't want to learn how to fish, because if they wanted to learn how to fish by now, they would have understood why your nervous system in defense mode is distress, and they would have said, yes, I want eustress, I want restorative embodiment. And what's going to happen once you say yes to it? It's not going to be, I want to do it now, no. It will be, oh, wow, I just had another opportunity. Hey, earthquake, some asshole in front of me. Oh, shit, I shouldn't say that one. Wait, some person who thinks great companies are great in ways that are hilarious. And so inconsistencies is definitely something that I spot. And with that being said, as we close on out, this was a fun live. So somatic mindset micro habits, they do work if you want to grow autonomous regulation skills. And that means you want to be able to reassure your 0-1-year-old. You want to be able to also share your 0-1-year-old, and that's detached panicky. And then you understand that if some people don't want to meet who they are, and therefore they're not going to become their securely attached self, they're not going to become their self-empowered self, and they're not going to become a love-based leader, well, they have fun with all of those who backstab, betray, and flip a switch. So they're consistently actually doing what I consider faking it, because their mask is obvious. And then they also don't know what real strength is, which is basically being able to forgive, process, and then, for the spiritual ones of you, yeah, maybe I'll save that one for some other time. But I was thinking about how God encourages, comforts, supports, and strengthens us, and how we can diffuse conflict and provide clarity, the word of wisdom, and how the spiritual bypassers, they continuously forget that their commitment is to humanity, and that's a sad note. But the Dalai Lama pointed out that scientists luckily can help us with all of this, because they can help us work with the first compassion, that which is our attachment category, and the attachment figure in our first relationship, the very important one. And so now we can fly like an eagle all by ourselves, and then they can also help us with the second, compassion, which is loving your enemy, which is really there's no enemy. There's emotion mature people who are intelligent, sentient beings, the higher human beings, future humans, welcome aboard, mystic, spiritual, mindful, and of course we have alien species out there. Anybody think that there's not other live, beings? But to have to make them good and evil, that's the one repeat story I noticed the bypassers doing. So over here, those who consider there to be an enemy and they're still looking to take that which is okay, I'm done, I think. But anyways, I'm having fun with this live right now. I didn't want to do it, and then I was like, it's been a while. So thanks for stopping by. I hope that you all enjoyed, and those of you who are watching the replay, as I conclude, what I was trying to say is that we do encourage each other from the God perspective to become the best version of ourselves, and scientists have proved how everyone can do it. But if people don't want to become their self, there's an explanation, which is why we don't want to demonize or make anyone sound like a monster, because they're not. They're insecure, so they're scaredy cats like I am. Every one of us is a scaredy cat, you see what I'm saying? The difference is I can admit it without having shame about it. Then I can also admit that humanity is imperfect and flawed. I don't need a conspiracy to talk about it. The fact that they move their asses when things are going wrong makes me think of all of the survival mode people. So if it's made by the people for the people, and we still have a bunch of fear-based human beings out there who are dysregulated and continue with their nervous system wanting to have to be pushed to the edge of criticality before moving into anything. See what I'm saying? I'm playing with a bunch of words, but the point that I'm trying to make is they don't wield their nervous system. They don't wield their embodied brain. So we do, though, and that's why conscious leaders come together. They see where the problems are, and we say, okay, let's fill the gap. My seeing the problem is there's a bunch of spiritual and personal growth, all of it. It's not even only gurus and enlightened ones. It's not the words. There's a bunch of people who don't know how to self-regulate and who consistently want to always have someone else around. And while I get that, my point is admitting it to themselves and then noticing the difference. And so if you're going to bring to me a Peter Pan, Lost Boy, and Wendy story, I get what you're doing. Those are the people who just motivate each other in this smoke and mirrors way, and then they don't accomplish anything. And that's not good or bad. They won't notice the difference because they're not missing the capacity to be in a securely attached, healthy, self-worth, empowered body. Because they haven't yet noticed the difference between how empowering it is to be able to master the level of depth and intensity of that anger. The level of depth, fear is the most uncomfortable one you will ever face, at least for me, the pure fear, because you literally, it's beyond panic attacks thinking you're going to die, but pure fear, I thought I was like, it's like a glass that was going to break or something. It was so, yeah, I thought I was going to my heart was going to implode, so that was definitely the most challenging of all of the emotions. Even though anger, I've been able to master that one easily, but that's because God and I have a relationship, so it's not my job to correct anything. I am a human, so systems, which will get improved, by the way. So again, thanks for stopping by, having a good one with you all.